There has been a lot of talk about the Rey Skywalker movie lately, or movies, multiple. The information seems to change by the minute, and there was also the insane quote that she is the most valuable cinematic asset, in some ways maybe the only one Star Wars has right now. This is crazy for so many reasons that would take this video in a wildly different direction. One thing I've been wanting to include in this channel is more original ideas. In the Star Wars universe, of course, so not entirely original. So instead of picking apart rumors, news, and hearsay, I wanted to give my own pitch for a Rey movie. A couple quick disclaimers. Any critiques that I happen to make about any of the characters are about the characters. I have nothing against any of the actors. Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac did a fine job in the sequel trilogy. I think Oscar Isaacs and John Boyega were incredibly underused, criminally underused, insultingly underused, and Daisy Ridley did a fine job. I just had to get that out of the way, the internet being what it is. The other thing I want to warn you guys about is this is going to be a lot looser than my normal video. I'm probably going to be moving around a lot. I wrote some bullet points for this story treatment. I don't have a fully fleshed out script. I don't have a writer's room here. It's just going to be a fun exercise. We're going to get into a new story. So I apologize if it's just me pacing around and figuring things out and correcting on the fly. I'll try to fix a lot of it in the edit, but I kind of want to just talk to you more raw and have a good time with it. My thoughts getting into this before we get to the story itself is that before they announce a 73 movie saga all about Rey, they need to get more people on board. They also need to do one good before you do a whole franchise. Instead of trying to plan an entire universe, just do one right. The core issue that I see many people having with the character is that they call her a Mary Sue. If you don't know the lingo, a Mary Sue is a character who is unrealistically perfect and lacks any flaws. Now, I don't entirely agree with this assessment. I don't have much against Rey. Yes, I wish the sequel trilogy was better planned out, but I'm going on that same tangent again. Having her struggle and earn her place in the saga would go a long way to more fans accepting her. My Rey movie wouldn't even be a Rey movie. It would be a Rey and FINN movie. I think John Boyega got sidelined hard, and a stormtrooper having a conscience and coming to, he could have been the most interesting character by far. Let's get into the fun part. Let's get into the story. I want to bring back the adventure. There's going to be some serious moments. I'd like it to stay lighthearted. This is not going to be a thing with every character's dialogue perfected. The character moments are really what I'm interested in. Rey is going to have a hard time connecting to the Force. I had a couple different ideas on this that we'll address in due course. But her character arc is going to be that she struggles to reconnect with the Force, and she has to deal with her past. She knows where she came from, she knows her origins, and that is really going to be in her head. Finn, who is just getting an inkling that he had the Force, is going to be going on a similar journey, but in the direction that Rey wishes she was going on. His Force is going to be a strong, meaningful connection that makes him feel more complete. And no good story is complete without a B story. We can't just focus on these two characters the whole time. Let's just tell the story in due course. It's going to have an opening crawl. Every legacy Star Wars movie does. The opening crawl would have to give the state of the universe. The New Republic has been smashed by Starkiller Base, and old allies are coming out of retirement to try to save the Republic while there's threats to the galaxy's freedom. Meanwhile, the heroes that the galaxy needs are distracted by their own journey. So we'll open up on Rey and Finn. They're going to be running through a dense, misty forest, being chased by a group of Sith cultists. These guys are really mad that Palpatine is finally gone. The forest is not going to be lively with sun and leaves and trees and green. It's going to be a dead world. You know, make it look like it was all burned out or something like that. Ancient Sith statues and ziggurats temples in the background. There has to be this intense sense of danger for our characters and some mystery. Rey and Finn are running together. Rey's got this bag in her hand. They clearly just stole it from these people. Finn is covering their retreat with the blaster. I think John Boyega sold the comedy he had in his movies really good, so maybe a couple lines to break the tension a little bit, but I don't want to start off that way. It has to feel like there's stakes. It has to draw you in. What is going on here? The cultists are coming after him with primitive Sith weapons, nasty looking blades, but not necessarily shooting back. Otherwise, we'd have the issue of how are all these people not hitting our two heroes. We could do cool things with the lighting where every time Finn shoots, the blaster bolt travels and the light travels with it, kind of showing just how dire their circumstance is. Eventually, our heroes get backed up to a ledge. Of course, a cliff. When you're being chased, a cliff has to come up. The Sith cultists are closing in, so we focus on Rey. She raises her hand, close her eyes. She's about to use the Force, push them all back. They even brace for the blow. They know it's coming, but nothing happens. The silence is deafening. Panic flashes across Rey's face. The cultists advance. Their chants are growing louder. Their weapons are gleaming menacingly in the faint light. Rey lowers her hand, defeated. She's calling it in. Maybe she's even about to give the bag back, or maybe she's going to drop it off the cliff. She'd rather no one have it than give it back to them. Then Finn steps up. He glances at Rey. He's concerned for her, but he's determined to get them out of the situation. He closes his eyes. His breathing goes from quick and shallow to controlled and deep as he focuses. The cultists are on them now. One nearly lunges forward. Finn's hand goes out. It's trembling. Sweat is dripping down his face. The air ripples faintly at first, and then a burst erupts from Finn. The cultists are pushed back. Not too far, nothing incredible. He doesn't clear a whole football field length of them, but enough to make them wary, enough to show that he has some power. He staggers. It took a lot out of him to generate this kind of power, but he has been working. He shows some disbelief, but also exhilaration. He did it. Rey stares at him. She's momentarily speechless, and she kind of says something, you did it, you used the Force, but it can't be a celebratory moment, because she's still sad about what happened with her, and also their situation is still incredibly dire. Finn gathers himself and looks at his friend. He cracks a half smile, and he says something to kind of put his friend at ease, like, told you I'd get it eventually, or something along those lines. We got to make it clear that they've been working together, and he's been having a little bit of a hard time without undoing all the tension that we've been building so far. He is exhausted by this. He does not have another one in him. The cultists start to close in on him again. We might be able to get a little bit of comedy in here where some of them are pushing other ones in front of them. They don't want to be the first one to go, but they all know they have a job to do. We can't do the comedy too hard, and we can't keep this going on for too long, otherwise it's going to ruin the entire tension, overstay its welcome, especially first thing in a movie after so long since we've seen these characters. Suddenly, the Millennium Falcon rises up from the cliff. Chewbacca is standing out of the roof hatch with his bowcaster, firing at the cultist. They start to scatter as the ship's weapons bear down on them. Rey and Finn jump onto the Falcon as it hovers, make a daring escape. On board the Falcon, they're going to walk into the cockpit as they're having the conversation. Finn's going to ask Rey why she didn't use the Force. She's kind of dodging the question, but it's important that they move their way into the cockpit where Poe Dameron is, as Chewie pushes him out of the pilot seat. It's going to be a little bit on the nose, but Poe has to maybe resist at first. He's a hotshot pilot. He loves the ship. He has to acknowledge that it is Chewbacca's ship. I don't know why this is so important to me, but it just seems crazy that Chewbacca, who was best friends with Han Solo, this ship was his home for how many decades, and it's given to somebody else? No, we have to make that right. It is Chewbacca's ship. He takes the captain's chair. Poe, you could be co-pilot. That's all going to be the subtext of the scene while Finn and Rey try to talk about it. Poe, after he gets pushed out of the chair, wants to shift the attention away from this slight loss he had and ask them, okay, what's so important? Why did we have to come here? What did you guys almost die for? This is going to be the inciting incident, what starts these heroes on their journey. Rey and Finn reveal that the item in the bag to Chewbacca, Poe, R2-D2 should be there, BB-8 along with Poe, maybe Dio if he's still in the picture. I think it's important to keep R2-D2 around, and actually, logically, R2-D2's home might be the Millennium Falcon at this point. What they have is a Sith holocron. It's glowing this red ominous glow, and Rey holds it up, and we're impressed. Maybe Finn's impressed. He probably has an idea what it is. Another good moment for comedy here where Poe can be like, okay, and? It's not doing anything. It's not saying anything. Rey can admit that she doesn't know how to open it. Okay, so why is this thing that you can't open so important? Rey's gonna have to come clean. She is having a very hard time connecting to the Force and has for a while. She can describe it as a fleeting feeling, something unreliable. She feels empty without it. She explains that the holocron is one of Darth Sidious's, Emperor Palpatine's, and she believes the answers to her Force problems are inside of it, but she needs to figure out how to open it first. Poe, who is high up in the New Republic military at this point, mentions that there's a Jedi being at Chancellor Mon Mothma's side on Coruscant, and they should return there so he can check in with the Republic and she can check in with his Jedi Master. Now we can cut to Coruscant, Mon Mothma. She's old, she's frail. She comes out of retirement to address this growing political unrest in the New Republic. There are loyal senators around her. They're discussing this new charismatic rival. This rival has to be everything you want to see in a leader on the surface. But he's advocating for a reformed imperial system of governance with a Senate to prevent unchecked power. In short, This guy wants to be the next emperor, but he doesn't want to say emperor because that's going to have an evil connotation for the galaxy after what they just went through with Palpatine. This is coming from our own history. I always found it fascinating that once Julius Caesar declared himself dictator for life, he was never technically emperor, and the Senate realized that their power might be threatened by this. Rome never wanted to have a king, and this is very king-like. And, you know, the famous story where they all stab him, I think it was 22 times or something like that. Caesar's dead. The Senate didn't have an idea. They didn't put their two-leader system back into play. I forget the exact name for it, but they had two equal leaders, so no one person could do too much. The important part here is after they had this emperor, just to make it a simple term, the Senate said, well, who's emperor next? They didn't go back to a republic. That just baffles me. I'm sure in the actual history as it played out is a little bit more nuanced to that, but just to give you the highlights, I found that fascinating, and I think it would be a really interesting thing here to explore in Star Wars. Palpatine was a bad guy, but was his whole system bad? Obviously, here on Earth, especially, you know, the United States, the Western world, we like freedom. We know an emperor is bad, but this guy has to be charismatic enough that it makes the audience think, yeah, okay, I can see why some people are following him. He can really emphasize the failings of the Republic in the time of the prequel era. He can emphasize the failing of the Jedi Order, which is going to be an important thing coming into play in my story in just a little bit. He can hammer on those points and, of course, be denouncing Palpatine at every turn, but say things like a unified military, a unified currency, this unified market. Look what the economy was doing. He can have all these pros to something that is very not pro. I just think it'd be a really interesting thing to explore instead of having the First Order remnant or repeating that kind of story. Let's go in a new direction here. The scene with Mothma, the senators that's setting all of this up, will have a cloaked figure. We only see this figure from behind at first, walking into the frame, so we don't see who it is, but you know that those robes mean Jedi. We have the stage set. We have Rey, who's having a hard time connecting to the Force, Finn, who's doing very good in his Force training, Poe and Chewie as the kind of supporting characters to them, along with the droids. The journey there is going to be Rey trying to go on this quest for Sith and Jedi artifacts to reconnect to the Force, Finn at her side still wanting to learn about the Force. Chewie is on board, he is not tied down to anything, and he has the iconic ship that can get them from location to location. Poe is going to come in and out of the story because he has got a foot in both worlds. These are his friends, he's invested in that, but he does have military official responsibilities with the New Republic that's barely hanging on. Then we have the Republic itself. We can have familiar faces, Mon Mothma, this Jedi that I'll introduce in a little bit. I'm trying to keep a little bit of drama here as I explain things. Hera Syndulla should still be around. Those kind of characters who are now aging, we could also have a nice passing of the torch moment that they kind of try to do in Force Awakens and then abandon for The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Our heroes returning to Coruscant now. The first person they talk to is Admiral Hera Syndulla. Yes, Admiral, she's way up there. She outranks Poe. Poe has to take orders from her, and she's always been kind of the mother, like in Star Wars Rebels, and she can take that approach with Poe. Leia was doing that. It's obviously needed for him because he's a hothead. They can go off and do their own thing, but before they do, Rey or Finn can ask, what about this Jedi? And Hera can make the introduction. The Jedi in question is Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka would be very old at this point, but she was still alive. Even though we heard her voice in The Rise of Skywalker, Dave Filoni himself said that doesn't necessarily mean she's dead. To take a step out of my story, there was also some bizarre news where someone from Lucasfilm claimed that Rey was now the saga's Obi-Wan Kenobi. She isn't. If someone's going to fill that role, it should be Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka was part of the Republic of the prequel era. She was part of the Jedi Order of the prequel era. She walked away on her own accord. She saw the flaws. She saw the Republic go bad. She saw the best of the Jedi become the worst of the Sith. You know, Anakin into Darth Vader. She has seen everything. She's been to other galaxies. She's dealt with the Mortis gods. She's been through a lot. If anyone is going to be the aging mythical Jedi figure to usher the new Jedi along, the new recruits along on a journey, it needs to start with Ahsoka. She doesn't have to be the main character. I think it's important for someone with all of that galaxy life experience to be the voice that Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness, filled in the original movie. Ahsoka's there staying close to Mon Mothma at Mothma's request. She's providing spiritual guidance. Maybe that's the wrong word. I mean, it's not like a god thing. And security. She's also using the Force to keep Mon Mothma's disease at bay. Mon Mothma believes that the presence of a Jedi is key to rebuilding the New Republic, but it is something that her political rival is using against her. It's made clear that Mothma doesn't have much time left. She really wants to see the Republic on its feet before she goes. Ahsoka's doing what she can do to extend Mothma's time, but we know this is a ticking clock. Meanwhile, Mon Mothma is facing opposition from these new political rival. They criticize the need for the Jedi's involvement at all. They point out the Jedi Order's historical flaws. They include their role in the Republic's fall and the transformation of Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader. That is public knowledge now. It was used against Leia when she was still a politician. Rey feels a personal responsibility to confront the Sith legacy, her own past, and uncover the reason behind her weakened connection to the Force. One thing I think would be really cool is to bring in another element from the new expanded universe, if you want to call it that, things that weren't in the movies or shows. There's this organization called the Path of the Open Hand, and this group advocates strict control over Force users because they do not want another Jedi disaster, as they call it. I think that is a fascinating angle to take. I want to find ways to combat and challenge the Jedi without it just being a dark Jedi or someone with a red lightsaber. So this new Emperor stand-in is allied with the Path of the Open Hand, and he also has another ally who is kind of contradictory to the Path of the Open Hand, which is going to be something that they can take into play to take this guy down later without it becoming into a physical fight, because that wouldn't really fit the story. But I think it'd be really cool to bring them into the more mainstream side of Star Wars. Rey feels very drawn to Ahsoka. There's a lot of familiarity there. You know, Rey really latched onto Luke and then latched onto Leia, which I think was more implied than what we saw. And she also, at this point, is kind of feeling lesser, maybe unworthy even, of Ahsoka's guidance because of her struggles connecting to the Force. She's also going to admit here, because of where she came from, because of Palpatine, she's not sure she should be reconnecting to the Force, but without it, she feels feeble, or I don't know if feeble is the right word because it shouldn't be a selfish act, but it doesn't feel right. She feels empty. She feels like she should have a bigger purpose. Maybe she feels like with the Force I can fix some of the damage in the galaxy that Palpatine did, even a little bit. But because she came from such evil, is she destined to return to it? I really want it to be a nature versus nurture kind of internal conflict for her. Ahsoka will say that her connection to the Force could be coming from within. It could just be Rey's self-doubt, not some external thing that's happening to her. Rey is going to ask about the Sith Holocron. Ahsoka is very uncomfortable about advising on using any kind of Sith artifact, especially given the fact that it's from Palpatine and Rey's close connection to him, but now she doesn't exactly want to say that flat out because Rey is already self-conscious about it. Ahsoka is going to recommend that Rey and Finn go to Ossus. That's the site of where Luke's former academy was. To take a step back outside of my story once more, I know there was a bunch of news that Rey is going to be training this generation in new Jedi. Rey herself needs to be trained first, and that's what this whole thing is about. So sending them to where this former school that failed was might be a great way for Rey to learn, to see that she's not ready to open a school of new Jedi, to show the audience she's not ready to open a school for new Jedi, and it's a great way that we can bring Luke into the story in a way that we all want to see Luke Skywalker. Ahsoka can say that there's probably some knowledge artifacts, maybe a Jedi holocron. Rey already got the books from that tree on Octo. There can be something there to help Rey and her Padawan, that's important, along on their journey. Rey is overwhelmed by her self-doubt. She expresses a lot of concerns that she's not capable of taking care of herself as far as the Force goes now, let alone can she train Finn. She asks Ahsoka to take on the training of Finn, believing that Finn would be better off learning from someone with more experience. This might be a good place where Rey can say, "Do you know any other Jedi?" And Ahsoka can kind of give like a knowing laugh or a little nod, thinking Sabine and Ezra and maybe Jason, Hera's son at this point, might be being trained. Actually, he should probably be Ezra's Padawan. That would be pretty cool. But Ahsoka's response would just be that teaching someone else is often the best way to reinforce your own knowledge. That's true in all things, so why wouldn't it be true in the Force? Finn is overgoing to hear this exchange, and he's going to be visibly hurt. He's never really had a home. He was taken as a child. He was put into a military machine. He never belonged. He never fit in. He was never really wanted. It wasn't until, like, Rose kind of made him feel accepted in things that he started to get it. So now to have this person that he's known for his whole new life since he made the decision to leave the First Order, there's a little bit of betrayal there. The moment is going to sour their dynamic, but we're not going to dwell on it for too long. It's going to be like an underlying thing in the movie, but we're not just going to sit here steeped in it. Chewbacca, he's going to agree to take Rey and Finn on their journey. He's the rightful owner of the Falcon. I really want to hammer that home. Poe has to stay and do his responsibility stuff, which he can, again, maybe it's another comedic moment where he's kind of like kicking rocks. He's not too happy about it, kind of like a kid who's being left out of playtime because they have homework to do. En route, Finn is practicing the Force, just like we saw Luke do. This would be a nice way to show the normal dynamic between Rey and Finn, where she's really trying to keep things going. She's a little reluctant at this point because she's distracted, not that she doesn't want to help her friend. Finn wants the training, he's hungry for it, and he's doing a pretty good job. I don't want Finn to be an Anakin Skywalker or a Luke Skywalker or anything like that. He's just a dude with some Force attunement who's working hard. We're not going to spend a lot of time in these in-between transit moments. I like the idea of getting more into the relationship of Rey and Finn, but there's already been a lot of talking on Coruscant. We've gotten some political stuff. We've gotten to introduce some characters. We have to move into another action bit. Our heroes get to Ossus, Luke's academy. You can see the ruins everywhere, but the ship starts taking fire right away. Chewbacca says he's got to get out of the system, and Rey says, no, we have to be here. She's getting a little bit obsessed and a little bit angry. We got to see that anger's starting to come out. Finn's a little bit annoyed, but he wants his friend back. He wants to do his part. So he has Chewbacca put them down, or they get close enough to the ground where they can bail, maybe into a lake, body of water or something. Chewie takes off with the ship to try to draw away a lot of the pursuers. That works to a degree. It takes Chewie out of the action for a little bit, or gives him his own action to do, while Rey and Finn are down on the ground dealing with the cultists. They have to work together. Rey's inability to use the Force leaves her feeling incredibly vulnerable, while Finn's newly acquired skills are getting better and better as he's using them. He's not just going to go from it was exhausting to push people away once to I'm ultra powerful. So his Force will be inconsistent. He'll try to use it as times and get nothing. He'll try to use it as times and get what he was aiming for. And he'll try to use it as times and it'll be way more than what he planned on. But we could have some great action sequences here with them. We can bring out some lightsabers. I don't think Finn should have a lightsaber at this point. I think it'd be really cool for him building one to be done on screen. I don't want him to be given one of somebody else's. I think he's gonna have to do his own kind of thing and build his own. After a cool action bit, they'll be digging through the rubble of Luke's old academy and come across a lot of interesting things. First, they're going to find a lot of teachings, and this is going to be a good way to open the door to the Luke Skywalker we all want to see. Luke as a Jedi Master, Luke as a teacher, Luke being awesome, doing some cool action stuff. We probably can't get into a lot of it in this exact movie, but it could set something up for Star Wars as a franchise to explore. Maybe an anthology series, maybe a miniseries, even a comic book, but I would love to see that Luke Skywalker we want to see. I want to see Luke redeemed in a lot of ways. In another part of the academy, they should find where the younglings were constructing their lightsabers. There should be enough pieces there and maybe a leftover kyber crystal. That's where Finn can get his lightsaber. That'll be something that comes out at the end of the movie, so you get that cool payoff of the glowing blade. Finding all of this stuff is going to give Finn a stand-in teacher while Rey's going through her own thing, so Finn can be learning from Luke even though Luke is gone. Something else I really wanted to fit into this, and as I'm going along, you can tell I'm figuring a lot of it out on the fly, I just don't think it's going to fit, is I would have loved to do flashbacks to a young Rey and a young Finn to fill in their pasts. I know there were some stories told about Rey's past where she found some old training simulators for flying, and she would practice that out in the desert, which is how she knew how to fly the Millennium Falcon. Just having her be a pilot right off the bat, I can see why some people online were saying Mary Sue. So if we had these flashbacks, it would fill in a lot of the blanks. I don't see how they're going to fit, so it's probably more important to just move forward with things and not just try to fill in every last little blank and apologize for what came before. Well, we could just correct it with a new story, and we're already stripping her down to build her back up. I think doing too much flashbacks, trying to get Luke involved, we're going to Coruscant, it's already a lot going on. We're a good way into the second act. I think we're hitting on the classic Star Wars themes. I want a battle of good and evil, the light and the dark, that's quintessential Star Wars. Something else that was very important in Star Wars, the original trilogy going to the prequel trilogy, is how easily democracy can fail. Natalie Portman Padme has possibly the best line in the entire franchise.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
We're going to see that in Mon Mothma's story. We're getting this self-discovery. We're getting the balance of past and future. We're getting the personal, internal identity issues like Luke going into the cave where he easily could have been the bad guy. Now we have this cool juxtaposition where Finn's growing confidence in the Force is an exact mirror to Rey's lack of confidence in the Force. So the one who didn't really touch the Force in the original trilogy just kind of had an inkling that wasn't really developed. I mean, the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special a few years ago did more for Finn's Jedi training than the sequel trilogy did. And Rey, who had way too much aptitude in the Force without really working for it, is now having to find it again. We could find something in Luke's Academy here, because I had two ways why Rey is losing her connection to the Force that I wanted to get into. One of them I really liked. I think it makes a lot of sense, but I think it would invite too much ire from the fan base, because it would make comparisons that I don't intend to make. So this is probably not the direction that I would take the story in, but I would have Rey open the Holocron, and part of the message, part of Sidious's message, would be the Force created Anakin Skywalker as a response to the growing evil of the dark side, to Sidious's power growing. Sidious didn't create Anakin. I think that's a common misconception people have. Anakin was created by the Force. He truly was the chosen one. He was supposed to defeat the Sith and bring balance. Balance does not mean an equal number of Sith and Jedi. For people who have been watching the majority of my videos, I'm sorry if you've heard me hammer this point home so many times, but it is important. It's a very common misunderstanding. Balance is being in the light. The dark is always there, but not succumbing to it is a person being in balance. It's crazy to think that for Luke to be in balance, for every life he saves, he has to take one. Like, that makes no sense. You don't balance the good with the bad. Balance is being in the light. That's George Lucas's version of it. It's in many interviews, many books. It's just what it is. So I think it'd be interesting if when Rey gets the Holocron open, Sidious talks about the Force responding to his initial rise in power, to Darth Sidious taking over the galaxy, and he managed to corrupt it. Then we can have the decrepit, disgusting, zombified, brought back to life, barely clone Palpatine, talking about feeling, as his power comes, he feels in the Force an equal response in one of his vessels. Meaning, Rey was only powerful at that time because Palpatine was back and lurking in the shadows. The Force uses DNA or use something close to him as the response. I am not saying, this is the part I'm going to get in trouble for, I am not saying Rey is Anakin. I am not saying Rey is a chosen one. Simply a response in the Force that elevated her power as someone who could get close to and take Palpatine on, as he wanted her as a vessel. That's all I'm saying. I am not saying she's the next Anakin, but that's why I don't think it can make it into the movie. Because if you put that in a movie and you put it in theaters, people will hate it, saying Rey's not Anakin. No, that's not what I'm saying. I think her losing her power just for the sake of not getting that kind of hate and for moving the plot along, and also to kind of give the character more agency, Rey losing her power has to come from within Rey. She's losing her power because of the self-doubt. That self-doubt she fears, as we know from Yoda.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Her doubt is going to become fear. She's trying to hold on to what she's losing. She's going to be scared she never gets it back. All of these things are going to push her to the dark. I think that is the most interesting way to take her character, and I think having it all come from within, having it be your own struggle, and not this wider destiny thing, is more personal to the character and is going to give the actor, Daisy Ridley, more to play off of. So that's the route that I'm going to go now. The Holocron talks about Sidious leaving a Sith Empire successor, and Rey is convinced that it's her. Who else could it be? We can touch back on Coruscant a little bit. I don't have a ton of ideas on what exactly to do with Chewbacca, Poe. I think Hera would just be like a cameo at this point, because this story would obviously lead to other stories, so having these characters in play lets the audience know they're still around. Maybe Hera is having Poe do something, maybe Chewbacca calls Poe, he needs some help, Poe wants to go, Hera's like, no, we need you here for whatever other reason, and it can show some growth on Poe's part that he actually listens to orders for once. The more important part of the story here is we can have Mon Mothma's health issues, this legacy character coming back to try to do right by the Republic one last time before she dies, directly mirror the Republic itself. I'm not going to go so far as to say when Mon Mothma dies, the Republic dies. I don't really want to go down that route again, but that can be the threat. I don't want another emperor to take over. I don't want to repeat old stories, but that can be the perceived threat of the audience and the characters within. Oh no, are we really doing all this over again? It's a fear a lot of people could logically have. That would just be a brief thing. I really want this to focus on Rey and Finn a lot. So she has the Holocron. It says that he's leaving behind an heir to the Sith Empire. This is going to absolutely haunt Rey. I think it's important that Finn sees it as well, because I don't want Rey to be keeping him in the dark. She has nothing against him. She was just worried she wasn't going to do good enough for him. So he can kind of feel the cold shoulder, even though the cold shoulder is not really there, but I also don't want Finn to just be mopey the whole time. So he sees that, and he starts to get a better understanding of what's going on in his friend's mind. He's seeing that he's so excited about this new aspect of his own life, and even the little bit he has, he would be devastated to lose. Rey's fears of becoming Palpatine are now more severe than ever. If she's supposed to be this Sith heiress, heir to this throne, heir to the Empire? No, heir to the Sith. How could she not become Palpatine? Finn can point out the fact that she's not named in the Holocron. It might not be her, but she is convinced that it's her. She's a clone of Palpatine's, a strand cast once removed of Palpatine's. She has his DNA. It's all there. Finn can use his own background to connect with her now. He was a child soldier. He was indoctrinated. He was brainwashed. He was forced to serve the First Order. A lot of people, if that's the only life you know, that's just the life you fall into. You don't see him as an evil organization keeping you down all the time. He can explain to her the power of personal choice, the power of hope, another core Star Wars ideal, another ideal of the Jedi. He can tell Rey, it doesn't matter about where you came from. It's all a matter about who you choose to be. Finn's whole arc, even though a lot of it was sidelined, was in being the guy who was always running away into the guy who was joining into the guy who's a believer. Finn, of all people, know that you can make choices in your own life and change for the better. So this moment not only dives into Finn's past, but it can also have a little bit of mending this divide between them. He felt a little bit betrayed by her, and now he's there at her side. It really shows his character. Without going too heavy-handed, it talks about the thing that Rose said to him. You know, it's not about destroying what you hate, it's about saving what you love or whatever. Not a great line, but that sentiment can be echoed here since, like it or not, those movies exist. They're not being remade. We're just going to play the ball where it lays. Rey is touched. I don't want her to be full-on evil or totally isolated. She wants to believe him, but she's still conflicted. Now she's trying to make the decision of resisting the dark side or not. And again, here, I want it to really feel like the audience that it's a possibility. And I think what's interesting here is, like, in Return of the Jedi, when you see Luke all in black, the idea was you're supposed to think Luke Skywalker might fall to the dark side. He might listen to Vader when he says, "Join me. We could rule the galaxy as father and son." I think the expectation would be the opposite. I want the audience to say, okay, I see what the story's doing. We might think Rey's gonna fall, but we know Rey's not gonna fall. she's just going to have this struggle for a little bit and then come through in the end. We can't have these Sith cultists be out of it completely. It can't just be one interaction, they win a lot of talking, an interaction, they win a lot of talking. I think we should do something with the wider galaxy story. I'd like to get some space battles in here. That part I'm not too sure of. That could be post-story, but now we're introducing a third story into this, which might get confusing. So I think it's important to keep our Jedi characters still running along. Now traveling in hyperspace, Rey will have visions of her turning to the dark side. That cool dark Rey imagery we got for like half a second in the sequel trilogy, that kind of thing is going to be coming into her head. Finn, who is looking out for her but is constantly being rebuffed, is going to retreat into himself more. Maybe we can have a comedic moment here, because we haven't had one in a while, where he's trying to talk to Chewbacca about it, and Chewie's listening. He's a sensitive guy, but we don't really know what he's saying. Finn doesn't really fully understand him, so there could be a little bit of a dynamic there if we decide we need it. I want it to look like the Republic might actually fall, and not for any war reasons, but political ones. I think it'd be an interesting take if they can point out some things about Mon Mothma's past. Maybe Leia's connection to Vader. I don't know if that's rehashing things on a character that we no longer have, so that part I'm not too sure on. And I also, while I said it'd be interesting if it happened politically, if you think about the kids in the audience, they're gonna hate that. So probably best to keep Mothma's thing as something to cut away to give Rey and Finn time to travel. The Holocron, the Sith heir, that whole storyline has to take them to a new location. I think it would be cool to revisit Mustafar. It might be cool to revisit Naboo, places that mean something to the dark side, to Palpatine. We could even go to Korriban. I think going to Mustafar would be the coolest. The remains of Vader's castle. Mustafar does have something of a local population. And of course, Sith cultists. Can't get enough Sith cultists. They can go there, and maybe there's new information. Maybe it's more holocrons, artifacts, books, something along those lines. And Finn, who's learning quickly, is starting to try to run before he can walk, and does something that sets them back, destroys a bunch of information Rey wanted, cuts off their escape to get back to the Falcons, something along those lines to drive a further divide into them that sets Rey into a bit of a rage. As our heroes are facing their biggest hardship, Mon Mothma, she's had it. The arguing, the stress, the disease, everything. She collapses on the Senate floor, or in those Senate pods, however that looks at this point. It's symbolism to show that the Republic is on its last legs, as this charismatic new guy is winning more and more systems onto his side. Tracking a little bit, this mistake that Finn makes with the Force, he uses it too much, sets Rey into a rage. Maybe she yells at him. She's not going to attack him. I don't want it to go that far, but she is able to tap into the Force, and she saves them in a way. Like, she fights off this latest attack from the Sith cultists, from, you know, their main villain that they can just punch and beat up, their main disposable villain. And Finn's trying to point out why this was wrong, and she sees it as, oh, I stopped them, didn't I? She's obviously justifying it. She knows things aren't good, but she can't admit it to herself. We can also find out that this new charismatic leader is also working with the Sith cultists. He wants the Jedi shut down. He sees discrediting the Jedi as taking another arrow out of Mothma's quiver, out of the Republic's quiver. So he's been feeding them intel that he's getting. And Ahsoka gets wise to this. She sends Poe and a contingent to go warn them as she stays with Mothma. The interesting thing here is Mothma and her political allies, their big confrontation, can now be exposing this guy for being a hypocrite. He is working with the Sith cultists, these people who worship Force users and the Path of the Open Hand, who don't think the Force users should have this kind of power. Pitting his two main support systems against each other can kind of be his downfall, taking his mask off. I don't want him to be a Sith himself. I don't want him to wield a lightsaber or a blaster. His thing has to be political. Rey, who did use the dark side and is trying to justify it, also feels really good about it. Not just about the dark side, but being able to touch the Force again. Finn is getting a little bit more clarity and determination on his own mission. He is going to be a true Jedi. I see him as being a Qui-Gon Jinn level Jedi. I'm not talking about power, but in that guy who listens to the Force and follows the Force, and he's the Jedi Master you would want. That's down the line, but that's the road that we're paving. He has now put his past fully behind him which is a direct contradiction to Rey, who is obsessing about her past more than ever. So our heroes on Mustafar, Rey is now able to tap into the dark side, even though she's not fully admitting to herself that it's the dark side. They're in Vader's castle, which works out perfectly, because it could be a great place to find a lot of Sith artifacts, which is going to be important. And it's also, the castle's design is like a tuning fork. It has those two big pillars. This is not quite a natural nexus, but this was designed to channel the dark side. Vader also did a lot of things in this castle without Palpatine knowing. He was trying to find ways to bring Padme back. He can have a lot of weird magic cult kind of stuff for Rey to dig through, for Finn to try to find answers from, to show the audience another side of the Force. All of this stuff can be happening in this place, which is helping Rey connect to the dark side. Rey and Finn are still allies. They're still fighting side by side. They're still working together, but Finn is getting increasingly worried about losing his friend. Her fighting is becoming savage and brutal. It's not just about survival. She is using her lightsaber at this point. She's hacking people up. I mean, that's gonna have to happen off camera. These are PG-13 movies. And as Rey is going on this berserker rampage, Finn uses the Force to protect her. Some kind of bubble, a shield, something a little bit more than a push, maybe something new, maybe something we haven't seen, but something showing that he is Jedi and he's on that path. Yeah, that could be really cool. I really like giving Finn this moment. I liked the idea of Finn building his own lightsaber, so that should probably happen before they're at the fortress. It should probably happen through one of Luke's teachings. Yes, so go back to where they're on Ossus finding all this stuff. Finn can go off on his own and find the pieces to put together a lightsaber, along with Luke instructing his students on how to do it. We don't have to show the whole thing. We could show Finn doing it, show what the video's about, he moves on, and that's when Rey can be opening the holocron and figuring all of that out. So in this big fight, we have the two lightsabers going. Rey's got her unique yellow one. I think Finn should be classic blue. It's just such an iconic thing. It's how Luke Skywalker started. It was the lightsaber color of the Jedi Guardian in Expanded Universe, now Legends. I think just the classic blue for Finn. We don't have to do anything crazy and fancy. It's going to be cool enough seeing him have this unique lightsaber. A lull in the fighting inside Vader's castle. Rey is in a room with a lot of Sith artifacts, a lot of evil stuff. It can't be set up like a museum. It just has to be this thing where Vader was trying things and then discouraged and stashing them. Maybe even a lot of the stuff is smashed up. Something is going to call to her, whether it's like the ring in Lord of the Rings, where it calls to Frodo, but no one else really sees or feels it. Maybe it's how like the lightsaber called to her in Maz Kanata's castle in The Force Awakens. It could be like the locket in Harry Potter, where it literally is evil coming out of it. Something's gonna be calling to Rey. The whole room is gonna have this like deafening hum. It has to be something that Palpatine would have touched, something really cool to design. Nothing related to any Death Stars, ancient Sith, old. I'd never liked how the dagger they find matched up to the Star Destroyer or the Death Star wreckage. It made absolutely no sense. So something old, not connected to something we've seen, but something that we know is dark side. And Rey goes for it. And Finn's there pleading with her not to do it or to destroy it, or no, we just have to get out of here. We have to get back to the ship. We have to get outside. We cannot be doing whatever it is you're about to do. This artifact that's calling out for her is telling Rey it knows who she is. It's saying all these things, maybe without saying them directly, but she knows she needs it. For a moment, Finn gets through and she's about to leave, or maybe she's gonna destroy it with her lightsaber, and she can't. She hesitates. She stops. When Finn goes to either take it, knock it out of her hand, maybe pull Rey from the room, that's when she lashes out and attacks him. That's when things get pushed over the edge. We know that inkling that she's the hero and she's not gonna turn, we were actually wrong. The allure of whatever this object is, it's such a part of her that she cannot abandon it, and she will sell out anything in this moment to get it. I don't know if dialogue's needed here, but we could have her say something like, "This is my family, I never had a family, I want my family," something like that. Something along those lines. It would be like she's purposely trying to hurt Finn, because Finn and Poe and Leia and Luke, they became her family through the course of the sequel trilogy. This evil is just calling to her, and when she touches it, it just has her. And if she would destroy this piece of her past, it would be like destroying a piece of herself. This would be, to use a Lord of the Rings analogy again, Bilbo Baggins, where the ring just has him. And when he gives it to Frodo, he sees it again after so long, and he just needs it, except he was away from it so long, was able to resist. She is not able to resist. So I'm not saying she's a Sith, she doesn't get the yellow eyes, but that's gonna be her path for a little while. Another angle we could play here, which I think would be really interesting, is that a lot of Sith, all they want is more power and eternal life. Palpatine was obsessed with immortality. That was his big thing even since he was with Plagueis. But Sith can never be Force ghosts. They can't get that eternal life or near eternal life that our Jedi heroes have that have come back. They even have Anakin do it and learning it in the afterlife, or however that came about. The one thing the Sith can do to keep their essence on a mortal plane is like possession. This object was possessed by Palpatine. Palpatine wanted Rey as a vessel, and when she takes this, he doesn't come back fully. We're not gonna go that far, but his influence is there. He's leaving an imprint on her as long as she's in possession of this thing. Maybe it'd be cool if it was a crown for the Sith heiress thing, if it was a piece of armor, even a lightsaber, something along those lines. And that's gonna be where the movie ends. I know Empire Strikes Back made it famous for the second movie in a trilogy to be the downer, but I think it would be really cool to subvert all these expectations, the same kind of thing Rian Johnson wanted to do with The Last Jedi, but not do it in a way where people feel betrayed. If people are already not all in on Rey, making her the villain can get those people in and interested, and the people who did like Rey are going to be worried. What's going to happen to this character that they liked? Where all the pieces lay, Rey is going to walk off, leaving Finn. Finn's going to get on the Falcon. They're going to have to leave. Maybe the Sith fleet or whatever's left of it is bearing down on them. Mustafar's a volcano. Maybe the Falcon can't stay. Something's going to have them leave Rey, but not in a way where these two heroes want to leave their friend, even if she did just attack Finn. Finn is going to talk to Ahsoka. This is not going to be a master-Padawan relationship. Finn needs a master. Ahsoka can either introduce him to Sabine or Ezra. I think it would be cool if Ezra was now training Jason, Hera's son, and Sabine is a Jedi. I think it'd be cool if Finn got paired up with Sabine, Jedi, Padawan kind of relationship, but Finn's also pretty far along in his training, just being that he's older. I think we need to keep it difficult and a commitment for people to use the Force. Finn's not going to take Jedi vows at this stage because there is no real Jedi order, but I don't think he should just be like, well, I went through this adventure and now I'm a Jedi. I think it's important to show that he's still learning, but he's well on his way. Ahsoka can also be a voice of reason here, again, the Obi-Wan role, because she had a loved one fall to the dark side, Anakin. She saw what that looked like, and she kind of didn't turn her back on Grogu, but she wasn't ready at that time for what could happen to his power and his feeling of loss and not having a place. So now she could do better to help Finn with that in a guidance role. She can be something of a mentor without being the master. And seeing this need for Jedi in the galaxy again, I don't know if we could do a whole trilogy of movies or a movie on Ahsoka being the one to start the new Jedi Order. I think she'd be pretty old at this point. I don't really know how that would work with the Togrutan, but she could kind of get the ball rolling. Maybe it doesn't need to be one person. It doesn't need to be Luke's Jedi Academy or Rey's Jedi Academy. We could have it be Ahsoka and Sabine and Finn and Ezra and Jason as a student. We could have a group of people get together saying, or we can imply it with visuals because I think that makes a stronger ending, about getting recruits and training up a new Jedi Order. Or maybe Ahsoka can tell Finn, oh, well, here's Sabine. I trained her and she can train you. And Sabine can say, hey, you know, me and my buddy Ezra, we're putting something together, and just hint that it's a thing without beating you over the head with it. We're going to have that high moment. The Republic looks like it's going to happen. Poe, Hera are doing well as far as military goes. Maybe involve Chewbacca in that part of the story. And then we can have these 6 now Jedi characters coming together and implying a brighter future there. And then we can go into the stinger. Throughout the entire movie, there'd be little moments of Rey her doubt, her anger, her fear, all the dark side traits, her tapping into the dark side little by little and very blatantly at the end. She's drawn to the dark side, her savage fighting style, the whispers from the Sith artifact of Palpatine's spirit being in it, her growing frustrations with the Force, and now she can be shrouded in shadow and looking visibly changed. She can be the dark side Rey that we saw in the sequel trilogy. She could be exploring more ancient Sith sites, gathering power. She's in these evil-looking environments with her new persona. She can be moving confidently and deliberately. It's almost like the confident, strong Rey is restored, but it's the negative version. It's the dark side version. All that struggle with her past has pushed her fully to the dark side, and she is well on her way to becoming a Sith. What I would do, say I'm doing a trilogy now, because that's a Star Wars thing, Rey is the villain. We didn't have a Sith villain. We saw no red lightsabers in this one. That will be Rey. That dark Rey with the switch lightsaber and all that, that vision has now come to reality. She is the bad guy. There's going to be a redemption story. Finn is not going to cut her head off at any point. She's not going to end up dead as a Sith. We're going to do a redemption story, but we're going to take our time with it. It's not going to be she's a bad guy for half an hour and then redeemed and she's with the good guys and there's another big bad or Palpatine's back for a third time. Rey's going to be the villain throughout the entire next movie and the majority of the one after that. And then she's going to have her redemption story. I also think it's important she's not going to be redeemed and then die right away. I want to see going forward, one, the redemption taking a long time. We had from Attack of the Clones, really, first inklings of Anakin going dark, to Return of the Jedi, so many years later, so many movies later. Maybe we're not going to stretch Rey as the villain for 6 movies, but we can imply more time passing in between the movies. Now with live action series, comics, books, we can tell other stories, we can make it feel and seem like a long time. But at least, if I'm doing a trilogy, Rey's the bad guy for the entire middle part and at least half of the last part, if not all of it. And I want the redemption to happen, and then going forward with the character, we have to see what a redeemed Sith to Jedi does in a galaxy. We have to see the dirty looks they would get for their evil deeds. We have to see their own penance for trying to make up for that, but it can't be done in fear or it would lead back to that, and that's going to be a really interesting character thing. She can have this whole outlook on it that we've not seen in a live action Star Wars project. So that takes us to the end of my pitch for a Rey or Rey Finn movie. I had a lot of fun doing it. I just outlined it and you saw I was figuring it out on the fly. If you like this kind of thing, please let me know. I'd like to do a follow-up. I'd like to continue this story with Rey now being the villain. If you rather see me write it out more like a narrative and do it more polished like most of my videos are, we could do that as well. If you don't want to see this kind of crap at all and I should just stick to lore, let me know that as well. I always had the intention of trying to do some more storytelling. I don't want to use the word original because I'm using another person's intellectual property, characters and things like that, but I've been a fan my whole life. I like writing, I like telling stories. I want to get some of that going on this channel. It could go in a billion different directions, but only if you, my audience, actually wants to see it. So thank you for watching this one. Thank you for sticking in there. I've been talking for like 2 hours at this point, and a lot of it is going to get cut because a lot of it was me going back and forth and stumbling over words. Thanks for watching. Check out this video next to dive back into lore, because that is what I do.